around the country, businesses are trying to adapt to keeping their staff and their customers safer with an increase in crime in neighborhoods. Some are reducing their operating hours, or as in the case of Starbucks, they're actually closing down stores entirely.
For more on this now, we're going to speak to a law enforcement analyst, a former San Diego Reserve police officer, Mark Powell. He's joining us live from San Diego this morning. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Mitch.
It's not a good morning for some of these businesses, though. That is some really disturbing statistics we just had a look at. Now, businesses would rather close than deal with this level of crime. Is that something that's new, and is it something we're going to see more of? What do you think?
Well, it's relatively new, but it's not something that's completely new. We have had an explosion of crime primarily due to a homeless crisis, a mental health crisis, and a substance abuse crisis. You put these three together, you're going to have the perfect storm. And if you think about it, if you have 50,000 homeless people, let's say, living in Los Angeles, what are they going to do for money? How are they going to support themselves? They have to steal, combined with a bunch of weak laws that allow criminals to get out of jail essentially the minute they're arrested with no bail at all. We need to do something about these weak laws, and we need to do something to beef up the way we are handling the homeless crisis. At what point are we as a nation going to say, hey, enough is enough? I want to be able to walk down the street with my family, with my kids, without seeing somebody shooting up drugs in the streets, throwing their needles down, with people on the corner, obviously mentally ill, screaming and yelling, and putting an end to this. In addition to that, we also have organized criminal activities. For example, a bunch of gangs here in the local area, LA, San Diego County, they get together and they do these smash and grabs in stores. So what stores have had to do is essentially lock their doors. There are some stores you can't even get into them unless you have a reservation. You have to call and make a reservation to get in the stores. This crime wave is out of control.
And that is something that we're seeing video on the screen of right now, is these mass robberies, whatever you'd like to call them. Now, we had somebody at a restaurant here in the Chicago area say that he walked into his staff bathroom, so not the public bathroom, but a staff bathroom, and caught a man shooting up heroin. And his quote was, "Nothing is out of the ordinary." You mentioned homelessness, you mentioned mental health. I wonder if we are doing this wrong, or we're looking at potentially arming security guards and putting them in the businesses. Should we be doing more to help with homelessness and mental health rather than arming security guards and putting them in Starbucks?
Well, we're arming security guards because there's not enough police to patrol. With the defund the police movement that happened, there's still lasting effects with all of this anti-law enforcement sentiment that's going around. We're having a hard time just recruiting law enforcement. Who wants to go into a job where they can be abused? If they make a mistake, they themselves can get arrested. So, of course, you're going to have security. Some neighborhoods over in the San Francisco area, just regular neighborhoods, are hiring their own private police to patrol their neighborhoods because they can't handle the crime anymore. So we have to support our law enforcement. This has to be a core function of local, state, and federal government. We need the resources to make sure that we have enough police. Or what we're going to have to do is hire private security, and the cost to hire private security is going to be transferred to the customer. So essentially, the customers are paying for the security, and you feel a little bit more comfortable when you go into a store and you have some security. Ask anybody. They like to see security officers around.
Well, but Mark, I'm sorry to break in here, but I want to ask you specifically about that point. What are the implications of having armed private security inside of a business? What happens if an armed security guard who is not a police officer shoots somebody inside of a business?
Anytime there's a shooting, there's going to be an investigation. So you want to make sure that if you do hire private security, that they're trained properly, that they've been through courses, that they understand the laws, that they're not just somebody that's in there that's given a gun and a badge and set out there on their own. The implications are there may be some conflict. There may be some incidences where a security guard does engage somebody in the store. We just had that individual who was armed in a store in Indianapolis and had to shoot the suspect that went crazy in there and started shooting people. So I think that armed security is going to be a thing of the future. I think you're going to see more stores with armed security, and I think it's a good thing because who's going to protect us? Who's going to protect the citizen?
Well, but then there is the increased risk that you're going to be caught in the middle of a shootout when you're just going to get your morning latte.
Oh, absolutely. Look, absolutely. This is a recipe for disaster. That's why I'm saying We have to address the symptoms and mental health issues, abundance of drugs pouring across the border, a porous border, and also homelessness. At some point, if we don't address these things, we're going to see an escalation of violence in the future like you won't believe.
Well, and certainly there are a lot of root causes to violence like this, and shutting down stores, unfortunately, isn't probably going to solve any of them, really, except for moving the crime to other places. Mark Powell, thank you for joining us this morning.